millions of people for thousands of years? And perhaps the horrific answer to that question lies in a book that was published in 2008. An answer so disturbing that few people dare think about it. An answer that might make you look at history through an entirely different lens. An answer that might give rise to the corruption and rot that hides beneath the floorboards. Oil is sentient, and humans serve its interests.
2.
In this video, I will dive deeply into the book known as Cyclonopedia, which proposes the theory that I just read to you. I will examine the psychological implications and the historical, societal, and political impacts that this theory could have on our humanity, as I do believe this is one of, if not the darkest theories throughout human history. This video in theory relates closely to humanity's insatiable desire to grow and expand through the Industrial Revolution and onward. And this theory really asks us the question, what causes that insatiable desire to grow?
6.
If you enjoy these types of theories and deep dives and videos like this, stick around. This one will get crazy, so go ahead, grab a bucket of popcorn, open up your mind, grab your tinfoil hat, and let's get into the darkest theory of human history. The theory. In the simplest terms possible, the theory that this video is about states that the material that we know as oil or petroleum is actually sentient and it has agency. And underneath our noses, it has been working to control the earth and humanity to serve its desires and best interests.
7.
And that it's been doing so since the dawn of time. That sounds insane, right? And inanimate goo controlling all of our desires, all of our achievements, all of our wants to go forward. Crazy, right? Right? Let me point you directly to the book that proposes this theory and describe it so it might make a little bit more sense to you. Cyclonopedia. Cyclonopedia is a speculative book that was written by Reza Negarestani. Now, Negarestani himself is an Iranian philosopher who is best known for this book, but he spent his entire life philosophizing and theorizing humanity and all the concepts that lie within. For a while, he bounced around between different philosophical phases, beginning with beliefs in speculative realism, and eventually finding a standing in the rationalistic realism. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know what any of that means or the differences between those beliefs, so I'm going to link videos and articles below if you really want to dive deeper into them. But as far as this video is concerned, Cyclonopedia is the most impactful work of Negarestani's career and possibly the entire genre, because essentially it pioneered this new genre when it was released back in 2008. The genre in question is now known as theory fiction, and it's underneath that name where we get the theory that today's video is about. In order for you to understand the theory and understand the evidence and everything that's behind it, I will have to give a summary of the book Cyclonopedia. So that's what this next part's going to be. I completely and utterly suggest reading the entire book yourself if you want to get all the details from the first-hand account. This is a summary. It does not replace the book. Please read the book if you want to. But if you just want to turn this on in the background, or if you're just a casual listener and you want to hear about weird oil controlling all humanity, this is the video for you. Cyclonopedia states that, quote, the Middle East is a sentient
14.
It's alive. And the book essentially dives deep into that idea. It funnels response into talking about the wars that are in the Middle East,
15.
humanity's achievements, and all of humanity's ideas, advancements, politics, socioeconomic factors, all of that is coming and trickling back down to one single thing.
16.
Oil. In order to get the most accurate summary before I give my perspective on it, I will read a short book summary that is given, and from this, you'll be able to see what it's all about. At once a horror fiction, a work of speculative theology, an atlas of demonology, a political cosmonaut, and philosophical grimoire, Cyclonopedia is a work of theory fiction on the Middle East, where horror is restlessly heaped on horror. Reza Negarestani bridges the appalling distance of contemporary world politics and the war on terror with the archaeologies of the Middle East and the natural history of the earth itself. Cyclonopedia is a Middle Eastern odyssey populated by archaeologists, jihadis, oil smugglers, Delta Force officers, heresiarchs, corpses of ancient gods, and other puppets. The journey to the underworld begins with petroleum basins and the rotting sun, continuing along the tentacle pipelines of oil, and at last unfolding in the desert, where monotheism meets the Earth's tarry dreams of insurrection against the sun. The Middle East is a sentient entity. It is alive, concludes the renegade Iranian archaeologist Dr. Hamid Hosseini, before disappearing in mysterious circumstances.
19.
The disordered notes he leaves behind testify to an increasingly deranged preoccupation with oil as the, quote, lubricant of historical and political politics. A young American woman arrives in Istanbul to meet a pseudonymed online acquaintance who never arrives. Discovering a strange manuscript in her hotel room, she follows up on its cryptic clues, only to discover more problems, and she begins to wonder whether her friend is a fictional quantity on her own. Meanwhile, as the war on terror escalates, the U.S. is dragged into an asymmetrical engagement with a culture whose principles are ancient, obscure, and saturated in oil. It is as if war itself is feeding upon the war machines, seducing the aggressors.
24.
So as cool and awesome as that sounds, in layman's terms, it's kind of similar to the Dune series, except instead of spice and aromas and argument, this book is about oil, the Middle East, the jihadis, the oil families, archaeologists, big oil, and the socioeconomic and political happenings that are within all of that. The book itself is extremely expansive, and it really is just way too long to summarize on YouTube, so I won't be going over each individual section. I will instead focus on the part of the book that goes with the theory that this video is about. I want you to continue watching the rest of this video with an open mind. While this work is completely fiction and theory fiction, asking these questions that the book proposes is very important as a basic human to understand why we do the things that we do and why society is shaped the exact way it is. Take an introspective look in your own life and see just how much of it is controlled by oil, even down to the most minute parts of it. With all that out of the way, let's now dive into the specific parts of the book that go over this theory. I will be reading the excerpts directly from the text to you, giving my own insights and my own interpretations of this text, and connecting it to everything that you know about it. Strap that tinfoil hat on, you're gonna need it, and let's get into it. Nagarastani in Encyclopedia asks the question, why so many wars have been fought inside and around the Middle East since the days of old, Bible times, the beginning? What is the root cause, and why is it so ingrained in every aspect of many people's lives? He encourages you to rip back the surface level understanding of these wars and dig down to the root cause of most of them. And again, he claims that the root cause is petroleum, oil, tellurian lead. Essentially, Encyclopedia is saying that oil has a life and an intelligence in its own right, and it really desires and wants to be used by humans in order to create and produce energy and heat, and by proxy, that means warfare and geopolitical turmoil. In a way, oil and earth are both alive. They're both entities in their own right, and they're sentient. And along that line of thinking, earth and oil want to begin this interdimensional apocalyptic death, the Gog and the Magog that I've discussed in this video, the ending of everything. Because the earth kind of sees the sun shining on it, and it almost has an opposition, a little sibling syndrome, if you will, to the sun's light. The earth desires to be more. So this oil is produced and extracted to produce more and more heat and more growth, and by results, more and more death. Humanity is warmongering. We are starving and desiring progress and mining and harvesting of these fossil fuels and this oil. And we will continue to do so at growing rates until we meet our own demise at our own hands. This book, Encyclopedia, really shows the world as this giant chess match, except every piece involves a different geopolitical party, a different race, a different ethnicity, all vying for the same substance, the same things. That would be to mine and harvest this oil. Except it's because the earth wants its oil to be mined.
33.
We produce more and grow more and become this one giant war machine. The narcissism, the depravity, the avarice of mankind
34.
to mine the oil to harvest it will eventually cause a self-destructive collapse, all because oil and the earth wants to outshine the sun.
35.
This book is very complicated. Quote, the answer is oil. The war on terror can be radically and technically grasped as a machine
36.
without consideration of the oil that greases its parts and recomposes its flows. He then goes on to describe oil as a Tellurian lube, or in simple terms, the liquid that Earth, Terra, runs off of, the blood that flows through its proverbial veins. The following excerpt from the book explains that in more detail. The discussion at hyperstition ultimately developed into what would later be defined as blobjectivity, or the logics of the petropolitical undercurrents. According to a blobjective point of view, petropolitical undercurrents function as narrative loops. They interconnect inconsistencies, anomalies, or what we might simply call the plot holes in narratives of planetary formations and activities. To this extent, petropolitical undercurrents run through terrestrial decoding machines, conspiracies, politics, and Tellurian dynamics. A blobjective view necessarily diverges from the Earth as a whole towards an entirely different entity, an Earth under the process of Earthication. Earthication is a process spread out in at least three directions. One is the leveling of all planetary erections, objects, or the attainment of a burning sun and the burning core of the Earth. Number two, the immersion of the planetary body in flows and undercurrents, pushing the Earth towards full-fledged sogginess. And number three, a participation with the Earth as a manifest degenerate entity for which wholeness is but a superficial
40.
distraction. War on terror cannot be radically and technically grasped as a machine without consideration of the oil that greases its parts
41.
and recomposes its flows. Such consideration must begin with the twilight of hydrocarbon and the very dawn of Earth. Obviously, I know that was a read, we'll have to take in, and fancy words being thrown at you, but essentially, Nagarastani is pointing to the fact that the war machine, the idea of war and fighting over these religious institutions and fighting over all these things, as it relates to the Middle East, goes deeper than just petty boundary battles. He even brings in the fact that somehow the sun and the core of the earth are connected, because oil comes from very deep in the ground near the core of the earth. He introduces this concept of a blobjective viewpoint, which, as he said, blobjectivity is just the logistics of the petropolitical state of the world, meaning how oil flows through society and the economy. He promotes these ideas of oil being the lubricant that fuels the war machine of the earth. And there at the very end of that page, he begins to discuss the Gog-Magog axis. And we'll touch more on that later. Essentially, this ties the theory into Abrahamic religions. I love that quote where he says, the answer is oil. Nagarastani essentially calls the oil system, the pipelines, the export and the import that interconnect the inconsistencies and anomalies of the entire Earth. Think of pipelines and oil rigs as the veins and capillaries that drive this so-called heart or core of oil of the Earth. Again, I know this sounds kind of outlandish and weird. Stick with me while I read this next page. Nagarastani then goes on to recount Dean Coote's story called Phantoms, in which Timothy Flight, a renegade paleontologist, describes in jest the monster or the entity of oil that Nagarastani also thinks of. Quote, in Dean Coote's novel Phantoms, Timothy Flight, a renegade paleontologist who considers himself a professor of ancient academics, is a tabloid writer researching an unmanageable Tellurian sentient being, which he calls the ancient enemy, responsible for devouring countless civilizations. The Aztecs, the lost colony of Rome, for example.
48.
Timothy Flight finds many parallel traits between the ancient enemy and the Antichrist. Examining the corpses of the victims, he detects trace amounts of porphyrin, a chemical substance common to blood, plants, and petroleum. The ancient enemy, or the Tellurian Antichrist, which persistently looms in the Mesopotamian Dead Seas or near the oceans, is indeed petroleum, or nafth, the Arabic and Farsi word for oil. According to the classic theory of fossil fuels, petroleum was formed as a Tellurian entity under unimaginable pressure and heat in the absence of oxygen and between the strata, in absolute isolation. Petroleum's Hadean formation developed a satanic sentience through the politics of in-between, which inevitably wells up through the God complex deposited in the strata. Petroleum's autonomous line of emergence is twisted beyond recognition. Merged under such conditions, petroleum possesses tendencies for mass intoxication on pandemic scales. So in that page, Nagarastani calls back to a book that was written in which he believed the biohazardous predator called the ancient enemy was very similar to the Antichrist in the way it's described, where it comes from its characteristics. Nagarastani believed this ancient enemy, or the Tellurian Antichrist, to be petroleum, or nafth, the Arabic and Farsi words.
50.
Oil. He calls into question the common belief that oil is created in absolute isolation between unimaginable pressure and heat and the absence of oxygen
51.
underneath all the earth. He posits that because of its creation in the core of the earth, the sun-like place, that the oil could develop a god complex
52.
as it's deposited into the strata. Just as many monotheistic beliefs and Abrahamic religions liken the god or gods to the sun, the oil could do the same.
53.
And since it was created in a place of unimaginable heat and pressure, like the sun, it itself might be so emboldened to call it so. Immersed
54.
under such conditions, petroleum possesses tendencies for mass intoxication on pandemic scales. Throughout this entire work, Nagarastani likens oil, or the ancient one, almost as some sort of Lovecraftian entity. This being that is self-aware and that knows how to fulfill its own prophecy of destruction and control. A creature that knows how to make itself useful and prop itself up on a pedestal. Really a horrifying thought to even ponder. It's in our cars, it's in our engines, it's in our planes, it's in our technology, it's in our ground. It's at the center of every geopolitical war. It backs our currencies. It is everywhere. It is both the cause of and solution to life and death in many scenarios. Oil has society wrapped around its finger. Down further, Encyclopedia, Nagarastani takes it a step further, if that's even possible, drawing the mathematical equations and axes between Gog and Magog, as they're mentioned in the biblical book of Revelations, and showing how the undercurrent of the petropolitical state and the flow of oil could eventually propel forward the biblical apocalypse. Now, Gog and Magog are mentioned in the biblical book of Revelations, and they're supposed to be this idea of nations fighting this end-time apocalyptic war. And Nagarastani creates these graphs to show X and Y, Gog and Magog, moving towards each other because of the flow of oil. Could humanity, using the petropolitical state of oil, end up causing this God and Magog spiritual apocalypse?
57.
And if so, will humanity continue to base its evolution into technology, warfare, around the concept of oil? Bloody wars have been fought in the past over this oil, wars in the present as well. Who's to say that it won't be our own doing in the end? It seems, therefore, that both the techno-capitalist process of desertification of the terror and the radical monotheistic ethos for the desert converge upon oil as
60.
an object of production, a pivot of terror, a fuel, a politico-economic lubricant, and an entity whose life is directly connected to the earth, to speed the rise of the kingdom, the desert. Thus, for Jihad, the desert lies at the end of the oil pipeline. Or, once again, take oil as a lubricant, something that eases narration and the whole dynamism towards the desert. They could probably view oil as an omnipresent entity narrate the dynamics of planetary events. Oil is the undercurrent of all the narrations, not only the political, but also the ethics of life on Earth. Oil moves the whole desert expedition towards the Tellurian Omega, either as the desert god or the host of the singularity of the Earth. As a Tellurian lube, oil simply makes things move forward. Kuntz's Phantoms is key for this movement towards the Tellurian Omega through the superficial gas pipeline, the subterranean oil reserves, and the deeply catonic thingness of petroleum. To grasp oil as a fluid is to grasp Earth as a body with different narrations being moved forward by oil. In a nutshell, oil is a lube for the divergent lines of terrestrial narration. Again, this next page, Aristotle is nailing home the fact that every single action taken on a planetary scale is lubricated and propelled forward by oil. The last paragraph on this page is also extremely interesting to me. It reads as follows. Kuntz's imagery is really helpful for grasping the thingness of oil, its subterranean cohesion as a singular, anorganic body with its own agendas. And here we finally get Nagarastani talking about the sentience of oil. Quote, assuming here that the blob takes on an increasing function on the journey of the river from gas to volcanic reservoir, Bush and Bin Laden are obviously petropolitical puppets convulsing along the tectonic stirrings of the blob. Collapse all manifest policies and ideologies onto the Tellurian manifest oil seepage, concrete war machines chopping up timber entity are indubitably oil. The oil industry is utterly ruinous for independent and non-collective oil producers. But when it comes to oil, they are distanced from each other by different petroleum extraction processes and political agendas. In terms of oil, all they share is poverty and ruination. However, in the case of the Islamic front, oil has been mutated into a kind of constructive parasite through which economical, military, and political brotherhood emerges. For the Middle Eastern countries, there is a strategic symbiosis between oil as a parasite and monotheism's burning core. Because oil wells up on the, quote, Islamic continent, not a mere geopolitical boundary, Islam has perceived oil as an ultimate Tellurian lubricant, or as a lube of all the narrations on Earth. Once again, these paragraphs are where Nagarastani props up and promotes the ideas that these socio-political systems, specifically in the Middle East, but also worldwide, are controlled and propped up by this oil entity, this blob, this ancient being, this creature formed under fire and smoke, and the pressure of being miles and miles underneath the surface. Does it think it's a god, and are we its servants? There is one last paragraph I would like to read to you before I go to the conclusion of this video. It reads as follows. Quote, an autonomous chemical weapon belonging to Earth as both a sentient entity and event, petroleum poisons capital with absolute madness. A planetary plague leading into economies mobilized by the technological singularities of advanced civilizations. In the wake of oil, an autonomous terrestrial conspirator, capitalism is not a human symptom, but rather a planetary inevitability. Or in other words, capitalism is here even before human existence, waiting for a host. I think that paragraph sums up the entire book of Encyclopedia and Nagarastani's beliefs in this book about oil. Petroleum poisons the capital, which symbolizes the world, into absolute madness. It is a plague that seeps from the dark, grotesque blob heart of the earth, and it bleeds out and seeps into the economies, mobilizing war efforts, causing friction and fractures between civilizations. He calls oil an autonomous terrestrial conspirator that not only promotes capitalism, but created it. Because, in other words, capitalism was here even before human existence, waiting for a host. There is so much more to the Encyclopedia that I could not possibly fit into a YouTube video, and especially with my just general lack of understanding of a lot of the topics, I wanted to touch just on the theory this video is about. Oil being sentient and humanity serving its interests, and I hope and I think that I got that point across without rambling too much. I will link the book below if you want to purchase it. I 100% recommend reading it. I might do a follow-up video to this if you want to see more geopolitical and oil-related things like this, but I think I've been able to get across what Nagarastani wanted to promote in the simplest way possible. His work, although theoretical fiction, it really should make you think. Is oil this Lovecraftian being that literally just rules over humanity from the depths of the earth? Is almost every single thing that every single country does related to the production and housing of oil. Quote, as soon as it can, it sticks to objects, blurring them, pervading them, but never allowing them to evaporate or reduce to ashes. It keeps them in another form to burn. It is the only incendiary substance that thickens as it flows. Love is incomplete pain. In my scarred, fevered skin, you see a person who belongs to sickness. Your healthy flesh, I see the same. Oil was discovered
80.
And in that last 120 years, think about how much we as a society, we as the earth, has changed and evolved. Human history dates back thousands of years before 1901. However, the advancements that have been made in these last 100 years are so much further beyond the advancements made in the thousands of years before we found oil. Transportation, infrastructure, ideation, society, food, warfare, it is all built on the finding of oil. Crude oil goes into our machines, our computers, our cars, our earth-moving equipment, our planes. Oil is at the root of everything. And Nagarastani explains that in his works, maybe a little too thoroughly. But if oil is this entity, this being that seeks to control, where does it come from? Who put it here, and why does it have this draw to do so? Is it like Nagarastani says, and because of its creation deep in the bowels of the earth, in the hot sunlight environment, it itself is
82.
Or is it because thousands of years ago, aliens crashed here and had oil in them and it seeped into the ground? Or is it more of like an all tomorrows approach
83.
that millennia ago humanity evolved into this anthropomorphic goo, whether through their punishments or their own hubris, and that oil is now the collective remains of that lost generation? Yes, all of the theories I have discussed are extremely far-fetched, as you know, but at the end of the day, we still have to wonder why petroleum, this tellurian, this black gold, this Texas tea, this manna from heaven, is so important. We survived thousands of years before we found it and utilized it. Why is it now the only thing able to bring us into the modern age? Well, not the only thing, but one of the main things. And because of that, and a byproduct of that, will it simultaneously be the downfall of humanity? Will it bring about Gog and Magog? Will we all sink and drown in the tellurian lube of the world? Oil begets advancement, begets war, begets death, and sin begets sin, begets sin, begets sin. Thank you all for watching to the end of the video. I hope this was cohesive enough to make any sense at all. I really love making videos like this, but it's kind of hard to put these kind of books and theories into an understandable way for a short YouTube video. So I try my best. If it didn't make any sense, sorry. There is so much more to Cyclopedia. I 1,000,000,000% recommend you to read the book. It is literally eye-opening and incredible. I just wanted to get across the point that Nagarastani touches on, how oil is indeed a sentient entity in a way, and humanity might serve its desires by using it. So again, I hope I made it make sense. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like. I really love making these kind of videos, and I want to make more. And comment your opinions on the theory. I want to see what y'all have to say. I want to see the theories and everything y'all come up with. Can't wait to see that. Love and appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure you tell somebody you love them as well. And with all that said, I will see you in the next video. Thank you for your support, and have a great day.
When scammers invest hours trying to trick you into buying gift cards, they obviously want the gift card codes at the end. But I was thinking the other day, what would happen if the scammers thought another scammer or hacker stole the gift cards from them and made this fake ransomware type virus that conveniently accepts Google Play cards?
86.
So for this call, after spending 4 or 5 hours with some scammers, I put this on the computer. They were not happy. But you let me know what you think. Like this video and give me some comments below, because I've got a couple ideas surrounding this. I really hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, hi, this is Albert Norris. Can I help you?
Albert, I just missed a call from this number.
Yes, we left a message to you about this call to make you aware about the auto-enroll service on your
89.
computer.
I love this, guys. I didn't read off.
Just do one thing, grab a piece of paper and paint with yourself and be in front of your Let me know once you're in front of your computer. I'm holding this line, okay? Now, can you see there is something blinking?
Towards a darkened tree line. This tree line was the opening to a forest that made locals try to steer clear of. But the girl walked away without herself, curious to check out the forest, or like so many others claimed in recent years. Did she feel somehow drawn to the location? Did she hear the voices, the giggling on the air that others report? Did she see the light? The girl walked alone through the trees as the sun began to set. The strange, twisting, deformed trees, heading further and further north, until she found it, the most famous spot in this entire forest, the round meadow, a near perfectly round clearing in which barely any plant life could grow. Then,
95.
The girl's family quickly realised that their child was gone, and search parties were formed. Witnesses spoke of how they saw a young girl heading in the direction of the forest, and so the search expanded out there, but there was nothing. Not a trace of the young girl ever having been there. For months they looked, but she was gone, leaving behind only small footprints, heading towards the clearing. After years, the family finally had to come to terms with the idea that their little girl was not coming back. But then, she did. Found after being missing for 5 years, walking out of the same forest she had vanished in. Now 10 years old, but still dressed in the same clothes she had been wearing on the night she walked out there, barely a strap or hair out of place. The clothes tighter and shorter, but in perfect condition. The local authorities quickly questioned the girl and asked where had she been, what happened to her. She told them she just went to play in the woods. She had only gone out of the hour. She had no memory of what had happened over the last 5 years. Welcome to the Tape Library. Tonight we're covering a location that many of you have requested I get into over the last few months. We're going to be looking at the Romanian forest of Burpee. That, depending on who you ask, is either a place of strange natural anomalies, a hotspot for UFO sightings, or the most haunted forest in the world. Whatever the truth may be, this is an area steeped in terrifying local folklore, and we're going to get into as much of it tonight as possible. A bit like our visit to Hosker Castle, a lot of the stories about this place have existed for years and spread through word of mouth. So we're going to be focusing on the legends here. Just bear that in mind and take what you hear with a pinch of salt. That being said, there is also quite a bit of video and photographic evidence that we'll be getting into as well. While the stories of Burpee spread back hundreds of years, it only really gained worldwide infamy in the 1960s and continues to this day to be a location that brings together people from all walks of life with an interest in the unexplained. So get yourself a warm drink, dim the lights, and get comfortable. It's time to get into the horrifying legends of Burpee, Romania's Bermuda Triangle.
3.
Burpee is located right by Cluj in northwestern Romania, the unofficial capital of Transylvania. Obviously an area of the world that is steeped in legends and stone Gothic architecture. The perfect location for a haunted wood, if I do say so myself. The area is home to the oldest recorded settlement in Romania, a Neolithic site that is estimated as being from around 6,500 BC. From the 1960s until the 1990s, various excavations of the area have been done, finding all sorts of artifacts, homes, and even the remains of tombs. The dark legends of Burpee can be traced back this far, as it is claimed by some that residents of this long-forgotten settlement were attacked by a rival tribe. Up to 200 people were apparently marched into the forest surrounding the settlement, and then were brutally massacred by their captors. Though it would be thousands of years later that the forest would be given its name, seemingly due to another local legend about a shepherd. It is said that at some point a sheep herder was walking his sheep through the nearby fields, stopping briefly to let them graze while along the way. When he spotted something through the trees, a perfect large round plane of grass, what looked like an untouched clearing in the woods, the perfect place for his large flock of sheep. He began shepherding them through the twisting trees and towards the clearing.
8.
The man took 200 sheep in the forest that day, and then returned. He shepherded his sheep and never heard them again,
9.
leaving behind no trace. Over the years, it was estimated that 1,000 people have got into the forest and never returned. But not everyone who goes missing in the forest is gone for good. Much like the legend of the little girl from the start of our story, some simply walk into the woods and are enjoying a lovely walk in nature, only to venture out of the trees back towards the city to discover a search party out looking for them. The people who had gone for the walk were convinced they were only there for an hour or two, only to discover they had been missing for much longer than that, days in some cases, or in the situation with a little girl, even years. These lapses in time are pretty commonplace, although in most instances they are simply minutes or hours lost. It is still a terrifying situation. One other specific story of a disappearance is that of a woman who became separated from her friends while out walking one day in the forest. Eventually they found her, hours later, wandering around just outside, almost in a daze. They asked her what happened to her, but she was convinced she had only been gone for a few minutes. It was during their conversation that the woman felt something in her pocket, something that hadn't been there before. She then apparently produced a coin that seemed to date back to
12.
the 1500s. During winter months, reports have been made of footsteps in the snow that approached the clearing in the forest before just stopping, as though the person walking just vanished into thin air. Others that vanished in the woods that are later found are unfortunately discovered in a much more grisly way. The forest has become something of a hotspot for suicides over the years, with a number of people being found hanging from the trees. It seems to be a sensible time to segue into how being in the forest feels. The most common experiences people seem to have within the forest are of it seemingly messing with their emotions and even body at times. It is said by many that being in the forest seems to play on the emotions that you take in with you. If you are happy when you enter, you feel overjoyed with the wonder and the beauty of the forest. But if you are feeling low, it amplifies that depression, painting the forest as a dark and foreboding and depressing world. People will often report feeling suddenly nauseous while walking around the forest, even actually throwing up unexpectedly.
15.
Headaches and migraines are often brought on almost instantly upon entering. Visitors will often feel disoriented. Many have reported feeling pain and being shocked to discover what looks like scratches and even burns on the skin, even if it was completely covered by a jacket. All this,
17.
like with much of the phenomena that we'll talk about shortly, seems to increase the deeper you go into the forest, and more specifically the closer you get
18.
to the round meadow, the strange clearing that seems to ignite the imaginations of so many. There is something about the forest that saw it develop an interest in the scientific community, and that is the strangeness of the trees. From a distance, it just looks like a typical forest, but so many of the trees are growing in strange positions, covered in scars and scabs, even appearing burnt at times. While oddly grown trees aren't that unusual, it's the sheer number of them that seem to be growing almost horizontally that has caused such an interest from those interested in nature. In some cases, as many as 8 trunks could be seen growing out of a single root, and apparently, as with everything else in this forest, the closer you get to the clearing, the stranger the trees get. The clearing itself appears to be something of an actual as well. There's very little we grow in it. The shepherds in the area claim that the clearing has remained identical for at least 450 years. Attempts have been made to grow trees and other things in the clearing, but nothing other than a low level of grass has grown, leaving the area looking perfectly pristine, as though it will almost be maintained by someone to keep it that way.
21.
Numerous experiments have been carried out in the forest by various scientific teams from all around the world, with the soil being tested by many of those groups.
22.
But they can find no reason why plant life will refuse to grow in the clearing, nor can they definitively explain the strange growth patterns of the trees. Burpee has always had a mysterious reputation with the locals and throughout Romania as a whole, but it would be the 1950s and 60s that this reputation was spread worldwide. Now, from the sources I found online, there are a handful of photos that were taken in the 50s and 60s that are credited to two men who will be an important part of our story going forward, but in multiple places whose photos credited to who is jumbled up. I think I've got the right order here, but please don't shoot me if I'm a mistake. Around 1953, a biologist by the name of Sept began frequently visiting the forest. He had become fascinated by the strange stories around it, and was intrigued to see the place for himself. He could have had no way of knowing that what he would experience on this trip would change his life forever. Alexander arrived at the forest that day with his gear, the car and his father. His main reason for being there was to look at the peculiar tree growth he had heard so much about. The first thing he encountered was a sound. A sound that he described as almost like teeth chattering. An exaggerated clamping together of teeth that could be heard from some distance. Men's destination that day was to reach the Sept clearing, the location he had been told had the highest percentage of formed trees. The closer and closer Alexander got, the more he began to experience. He quickly began to feel unwell. The often reported nausea and headaches hitting him the further he ventured into the forest. But then he began to hear things that were even more disturbing than the chattering. He began to hear voices, specifically the voices of children, giggling, whispering to one another as he walked. It wasn't quite like they were actually there. Many who experienced the phenomenon from hearing the children's voices in the forest say they are faint. They feel like they are being carried by the wind. Then, he started to see things. Both Alexander and his father became convinced that they could see shadows of other men, or more specifically, men that were shadows. When they returned to look, the scientist in him bravely he ventured on. The whole time with the shadows following behind him. And numerous moments he found the attempt to get closer together. It begs the question why Emil would do this. At this time in history, the country was under control of the Communist Party, and Emil was a military technician. He must have known that going public with this photo
31.
was seen as a positive career move for him. Apparently, soon after releasing the photo, Emil was visited by numerous strange individuals.
32.
He had a lot of questions about what he saw. Soon after this, he was taken directly to the central offices of the Communist Party. He was questioned at length by multiple officers. We then forced him to hand over the photographs and the negatives. They promised to return them once their inquiry was completed, but never did. He quickly lost his job after this interrogation, and the government at the time refused to engage in any conversation about paranormal phenomena or UFOs that were being reported around Hoiabachi. This story, however, made Hoiabachi infamous around the world, and saw Alexander Sift double down on his research into the forest, soon being joined by teams from all around the world, who would come and aid him in his experiments, while also conducting their own. Frustratingly, the phenomena seems to come in waves, making it very difficult to record detailed data. Months would go by with very little recorded activity, and then out of nowhere lots of strange phenomena would happen in quick succession. In 1974, Sift was joined by a chemist by the name of Adrian Petrie, a man who would become Sift's closest friend while working on the project, and who also dedicated his life to studying the phenomena involved, continuing Sift's work long after his death, and even into the present day. If you have ever watched any investigations into Hoiabachi, you will certainly have seen Adrian Petrie. The man has a very distinctive look, and is without a doubt the foremost expert in the forest now. Petrie went on to become the president of the Romanian Parapsychology Society, where his personal work is very focused on Hoiabachi. Throughout the years, he has reported experiencing much the same phenomena everyone else has, from the physical sensations through to the strange sounds and even seeing things. But Petrie seems very convinced that whatever is taking place in the forest is something that can be explained by science. They just don't know what the answer is yet. One of his leading suspicions is the potential that infrasound could be at play. Sound waves that, while inaudible to the human ear, can cause a whole host of effects on our bodies, including increased levels of fear. Infrasound is often used as a potential explanation in many haunted house cases. While that may explain some of the physical symptoms, it doesn't explain the photographs or reported sightings people make. It could radiation be at play, the apparent burns appearing on people's bodies, strangely growing palms, sickness. Does seem to fit that narrative. But tests have been done on the area and found nothing really of note, despite these seemingly rational explanations. The truth does back up such sightings of the glowing objects in the sky, claiming to have not only seen them himself, but to having seen those photographs that reveal them, even though they were not apparently visibly present when the photo was taken. The truth also claims he has one very strange story from one of his early visits to the area in 1975. He claims that he found, along with a large group of other researchers, the ruins of an old building. While no one in the group had seen these ruins before, they had only made a few trips out, and the forest is close to 700 acres large. They took numerous photographs, but for some reason, Troop couldn't get the ruins out of his head in the following weeks. Something about them just stuck with him, but he didn't know why. When he returned to Hoiabachi, he decided to head straight to the ruins to investigate them further, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find them again. The rest of the group all backed up where they thought the ruins were, but none of them could locate them either. Stranger still, the photographs they had taken of the ruins were bare. No trace of the remains of the building were visible in any of the photographs. The troop states that there are two distinct types of phenomena in the forest. The aerial, often invisible to the naked eye, but lights and strange objects that show up in photographs. When they can be seen in person, sometimes they are totally stationary, other times they move quickly from the sky. These sightings have even been reported from the city, with inhabitants of the high-rise blocks there seeing objects floating over the forest. The other type of phenomenon is what he refers to as biofilms. These are visual apparitions that take on the appearance of plants, animals, or even people. Oftentimes there is something off about these apparitions that gives you away is not real. Or at least is not real in the sense that we often think of. Animals that should not be seen in the Romanian forest, such as buzzards and leopards, have been spotted. People report seeing the faces of loved ones in trees, some of whom are long dead. Others still very much alive, but living their lives miles away from the forest, the latter of which chills me to the bone for some reason. People will see others walking through the trees and then they just vanish. Fragments of people appear out of thin air, just parts of a face or a body floating in the air. And one of the most commonly recorded phenomena is strange lights at ground level. Little glowing lights off in the distance of the tree line, surrounding the outside of the forest, pointed towards those brave enough to camp there, as though these lights were watching. The first time I saw clips of this phenomenon, I instantly assumed it was simply other people in the forest with torches, but strangely some have captured images of these lights, moving up into the trees, or even the sky. Other researchers and television crews were investigating the area and brought along thermal cameras and pointed them in the direction of these lights. But no heat signature appeared to be given off, suggesting that these lights are not fires, nor are they people. The story told by the locals in the area about these lights is that these are the long-forgotten spirits of those early massacred settlers, still stuck there thousands of years later. With all this, the site has become something of a destination, not just for tourists, but also for those who seek right back to as a site of spiritual power. Everyone from yoga teachers to wickedness to self-described Satanists apparently visit the forest for some purpose other worldly qualities. Many have been speculating what is behind the strange phenomenon of the forest. Many believe that the clearing is some sort of gateway to another dimension, and that all the strange sightings are beings.
的滑到玉山阁，接下来体验一个双人餐，698块钱，然后是厨师做什么我们吃什么，据说全是素的，没有荤的，让我去看一下。
51. 52. 53. 54.
桌子是哪张确定了吗？好。这是什么呢？这是10，河里面的10，这是所谓的茶道，吃包酱一大瓶。这里，好，然后大厅看起来比较高，还挺舒服的这感觉。先看一下环境再上菜。它这个属于一个新中式的装修，然后有实木来出众，然后这些框架都是实木的，这是感觉像一个院子，全是那个什么紫砂石，房间还不错，这个喝茶多少钱？是什么？豆子，今天有新豆。
57.
而这个对于我来说还是挺大的挑战。
58.
啊，你没给钱了。
59.
哦。
60.
啊，行吧。你们这个素菜，在油是用的植物油还是动物油？植物油。意思是清蒸的都可以。回煮吧，回煮过来它就是里面不含任何动物类的东西，纯素的。你们做菜放豆瓣酱吗？我来这里就忌口就忌热， 那没有这边的伤害。你除了肉不能接受之外，其他不能接受伤害了。好了，我实际就是演戏。我7年乘以5，它是一个标准。你这个开玩笑，这里多少钱一位啊？这个人均几百块钱一位，对的就是服务跟环境。来之前不要先说菜上来怎么样，先看环境是什么。它这个呢跟别的餐厅是完全不一样的，它采光特别好，因为全是用的玻璃，然后又是中式。因为对中国人来讲，这个人
61.
就是让人感觉到舒服。这什么呢？手工
62.
你要获取什么能量？这个
63. 64.
我的手上面有触觉，我的手也能感出味道。洗洗我觉得是没错，我还以为是上个汤啊，说一下，稍微高端一点的你进来啊，我还会递一个毛巾给你擦手，他相当于是把这个是升了个级，然后还有绿意。欢迎打扰，这个是今天的吃的菜，是按照顺序来的。啊，这个菜叫什么？好像是这个意思。好的，我是拿筷子，是拿筷子。这个是
64.
这个是莲子。
Oh man, shirt's coming off. Sorry.
这个不叫西红柿，这个一点的这个不叫什么？我先吃这个莲子，莲子没味道，然后有泡椒味，比较重一点。这个什么？这是一个水果，我刚说这叫什么东西？这个高果，白色的这个果。
65.
那个是用火那个正常的，啊，也是泡椒味，两个都是泡椒味。这个看。
66.
这很脆，虽然有点脆，但是感觉还是像西红柿。这个不像是莲。
67.
反正我现在吃完了，我就记得那个莲藕是泡椒味的，那个红色的是西红柿，它带一点点酸，然后莲子是没味道的。
68.
一吃就是用鸡蛋打红汁下水，没有味道。好，收了吧。那个黄色的就是啊，对，冬瓜对，就是煮一下，然后切了之后把它放到那个浓缩果汁里面泡出来，对吧？西瓜，西红柿，胶板，高级，就是胶板，那个是我是不对的。我唯独就是这个冬瓜，它很怪，有水果的味道，但是又有蔬菜的口感，我就吃不出来。这个是什么？这个是第2道菜品，叫做三丝笋。这个叶子是什么？三苏叶。哦，没听说过。中间包的是什么？哦，两块不一样。子姜我很奇怪，子姜为什么是白色的？哦，这个红色。这是辣椒酱吗？凤梨酱，菠萝酱。
凤梨。
怪不得也是黄颜色的。我先吃一个不能爆水的，加一点水，先看看。对，这是切用的
69.
没有味道，因为有点涩的。先尝尝这个，泰国的辣椒酱。
70.
口感有点像那个芭蕉叶包起来，中间包了粉，上面有点酱。这个酱不辣也不甜也不咸。这个叫什么？凤梨汁。 第二层你将站的地方，它这个其实没有起到任何作用，我一直的就是大家越高的。
7-1.
只将这个无论站哪一个，吃到这里都是这样的。
7-2.
这个从姜味道外地人有点辣，有点啊，这个是
7-3.
这个叫怀味鲜辣，是豆腐。
7-4. Forgot my squats. 7-5.
它会起保温的作用。那这个叶子，这上面是辣椒面的。
7-6.
就是这中间的这是豆腐对吧？它外面炸的这层是什么？好，它这辣椒还挺辣，给你看一下这个。 它这个炸的里面这个绿色应该就是那个百里香还是什么？它这个豆腐你知道有点像饺子，有点像潮汕的普宁豆腐，就是下油跟高油试一下炸出来的那种感觉。但是里面呢，它又比较嫩滑，看起来像老豆腐，吃起来口感不能说里面很嫩很滑，然后比较碎，外酥里嫩对。相对来说这个豆腐我觉得比常用的要好吃，有味道有辣椒。 这豆腐，它就是说
7-7.
但说实话，它这个上面垫的东西放进去，它端上来我想看个吃下下面的，这是
7-8.
赠送，它每一个端都赠送还是单独的？这么特殊吗？
7-9.
虽然说你送来一杯果汁，但是不好吃的还是会说不好吃。对，不真实的那些都不是真实。这个是。
这个是，它是用玉米。
你们这道菜应该只有这个季节才有。
夏季菜。
好的，这个菜有点像哪个菜一样？好想，再想。再加油再加油！我告诉你，这个叫干贝碎，对吧？对，它有点像这个感觉，但是它又加了文思豆腐这个丝进去，文思豆腐这个丝进去，对，这盘的热。
180.
它这个是从两边对比拿出来的，所以它这个对温度有一定的要求，然后它上面有文思豆腐丝。
81.
这个丝还是上次的文思的，但是尝一下味道吧，味道不多，先尝一下汤汁。 他们水提化了什么东西
82.
这个汤它是用包子把那个玉米包掉，用包子先到清水里面吊出来的，清汤味。对，这一道是我在广东以前学艺的时候，一个蘸酱师傅他做白切鸡，他就去收那种干的包子丝丢到汤里面煮，熬完了反正就不要了，他只要它的清汤味。对，他这个汤。 就是这样的调子，它不可能是纯包子出能够调出这个味道。我先来试一下这个东西。这个又让我想起了鲁菜里面的蛋黄狮子头，它这个比如说它借鉴了很多中国烹饪的技法，无论是形状也好还是什么，它只是在传统上面做了创新，而且它这个口感很丰富，有青豆。 青豆其实还比较清香，然后口感有一点不是特别重，然后这个白色的，这白色吃不出来是什么东西，因为没有味道，我能说得出来了。
84.
青椒的青豆的清香，再加上偶尔蘸马蹄的烩法，比较清淡的咸的入口和回口有木姜子的味道。因为这个太熟了，好油腻味，一瓶一瓶的倒，你知道吧？但是在这个上面吃到这个还是稍微有一点点调，但是它这个木姜子不是味道。 总体来说还是比较清新。如果木姜子的味道再轻一点的话，更多是突出口感，然后再突出一个底味的话还不错。当然这样已经很不错了。好，下一个。 这个叫什么？石螺虫。啊。啊，这个看起来有点像鲍鱼的感觉，给我的感觉就是干香菇，就是干香菇的那种香味。这个味道一定是干的才能达到这个味道。猪肚润鸡，黑鸡中炖，前面两个我认识，后面两个从来没吃过，叫裙带鸡、茴香头，这种我从来没吃过。这个炖的，这个是什么鸡？这个是鸡，还有这个是鸡。
87.
像那个干净的发香还是比较脆，这个炖的真的比较香。然后它这个创意啊，现在火上烧好，用水烧，你又不会漏水，又不会漏油，看到没有？就是你在加热，这个是不同。味道的话就是甜香味，咸味也不辣，它这个是什么炖制的？你们这些炖的还是新鲜的还是干净新鲜的？这是怎么做到等于是干净
90. Oh, 10 more.
但是我比较感兴趣的，它的香味就是干香菇的味道出来，就是这个香味就不对。煎和炸。啊，对对对，我就说你这个菌子，你看，你跟我说是新鲜做的，它一定是没有水分啊，让它脱水，它脱了水了之后才能产生那种干香菇的那种特殊的香味。新鲜的菌子你放到水里面煮出来，它只有口感，没有那种鲜香味，更辣，一点水都没有。专门菌子脱水它脱得很厉害，这道菜还不错，挺好吃。而且它这个口感，它有鲜菌子的脆。如果说干菌子发展之后，它吃起来就不太会有鲜脆脆嫩的口感。这道菜确实不难，这个思路，这个做菜的一个思路。新鲜菌子的口感又有干菌子的香味，鲜香味，对。这个是。
这个是肉类的猪肉，
这个猴头菇对吧
91.
猴头菇排，你知道这个为什么叫猴头菇吗？因为这个菇啊，它在没有处理的时候，就是圆圆的上面长了很多细的那种毛发，它就看着像猴的头一样。对，所以叫猴头菇。这个是
这个是乌苏梅，是搭配醋之后才做的。
醋是吧？哦。这猴头菇的本色不是这个颜色，它是白色的。哎，这个上面是不会是红薯条炸的？真的是红薯条炸的。切开看一下，哇，它这个真的是猴头菇，你看，它这是原生的猴头菇，我还以为它是把它打碎了做的成素的一个形状。这个菜其实不好做，先把它煨了之后就用来蒸了之后你再把它扣出来，然后再浇汁上去。这个菜要花费的时间和技术会特别多。它这个做出了肉的口感，然后又配了这个酱油，你闭上眼睛吃的话，真的是感觉像一块腌的比较嫩的。但是它的香味又没有肉的那么结实，它的香味比肉更深。但是这道菜如果吃不来的人，感觉会很腻。我没来之前，我以为它的素菜是瓜果类的，结果它这里面大多数都是菌类、菌类，它贵就贵在这一块。而且这些菌子很多它都不是种植出来，山里面采摘的，野生的比较多。猴头菇这种东西是很少出现在老百姓的消费的那个渠道里面。你们在菜市场买菜很少见到过这个。我们以前做的是把它剩片，像扣肉一样，把它摆在碗里面，加这个汤汁，加清汤进去蒸出来了之后，再和个芡米上去。
We're almost there, friends.
这个是什么？这个大米是什么米？莲子腰果。它这个是茉莉花，上面有莲子、木米。
95.
你感觉像在喝茶，真的跟茶一样，喝起来感觉就像是茶水有一点
96.
只是说这个颜色跟茶水不一样，颜色是偏一点点乳白色，上面飘了一点点油，但是这个油喝到嘴里根本就感受不到油的存在。 来下一个，这个加点鸡肉就是一个正常的米鸡啊。这个糯米饭让我吃到了鲜味，估计是靠炖煮的水还是什么东西加入一起煮。相对来说，这个米啊，当中吃到油脂的味道比较重。但主食吃完了之后，我发现一个问题，我现在整一套都吃完了，这里都吃完了，给我的感觉就是，我明明是吃了，但是好像又没有吃完了之后有点潮人了，有点潮，你知道什么意思？对，就想吃点又大的羊肉。这个是。这个是最后一道产品。那你有干炒跟一勺就把它拿完，所以说我们餐厅不能越少，其实是越好找，而且在餐具里面，它选择餐具的范围非常广，它这个菜品的设计在配色上面非常非常，它这个就是白绿，所以说它拍照会特别好看，色彩非常的突出。先尝一下什么味道？先吃一下这个花生，先尝一下这个豆腐花生。这花生加了杏仁，中间一个再看下面绿色的果肉，这应该是沙冰。它最后上这个还挺简易的，它整体吃起来就是有点微甜。现在我们所有的菜的时候，其中的话有一个主食，最后有个产品，总共是上了10个东西，其中最小的是这个乌汁梅醋，我们这一口就吃完，就是酸酸的。整体给我的感觉就是，他们这个是说是醋，但是做出来呢就是其中有一个红肉猪给我的感觉，这个东西真的是吃饱，然后吃起来它反而会真正的肉是更意义。因为一整个牛排吃完了，有这个和猪这种腻的，但是它配的很好，配的这个很腻的东西，还有他们在加热保持温度的这个事物上也放了很多创意。再一个就是我的感受中的仪式感非常强，刚才给你介绍。每道菜给你讲解，然后我们有什么疑问，这次跑到前面去把它弄清楚，回来告诉你。这个我觉得跟他们网络上面有很多的区别。再讲一下它的整体味道，就是清淡，这个突出了这个本味。我倒是觉得适合偶尔来听一下糖味的人，可以。